we on?
This is number 25.
Ooh,
And
already?
this song is called In the Garden, Key of G.
Ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3.
friend, Rose, 27 years, Chicago police officer, said we shouldn't sing,
But we do.
but we just did. In the Garden is a 1912 gospel song written by American songwriter C. Austin Miles. He lived between 1868 and 1946. A former pharmacist who served as editor and manager at Hall Mack Publishers for 37 years. According to Miles' great-granddaughter, the song was written in a cold, dreary, and leaky basement in Pitman, New Jersey. Here is the entire story. Gospel composer C. Austin Miles was originally educated and trained as a pharmacist, but after achieving some success as a songwriter, he became a full-time music editor for a Hall Mack publishing company in 1898. And he continued in a similar capacity when Hall Mack merged with Road Heaver Company in 1935. Miles' most famous song by far is In the Garden. He provided this story of the song composition to one of his colleagues, George W. Sandville. One day in March 1912, I was seated in the dark room where I kept my photographic equipment and organ. I drew my Bible towards me. It opened at my favorite chapter, John XX, is that? 20. I had to ask that. I wanted to be sure. John 20. Whether by chance or inspiration, let each reader decide. That meeting of Jesus and Mary had lost none of its power to charm. As I read it that day, I seemed to be part of the scene. I became a silent witness to the dramatic moment in Mary's life when she knelt before her Lord and cried, Rabboni. My hands were resting on the Bible while I stared at the light blue wall. As the light faded, I seemed to stand at the entrance of the garden, looking down a gentle winding path, shaded by olive branches. A woman in white with head bowed, hands clasping her throat as if to choke back her sobs, walked slowly into the shadows. It was Mary. As she came to the tomb upon which she placed her hand, she bent over to look in and hurried away. John in flowing robe appeared, looking at the tomb. Then came Peter, who entered the tomb, followed slowly by John. As they departed, Mary reappeared, leaning her head upon her arm. At the tomb she wept. Turning herself, she saw Jesus standing. So did I. I knew it was he. She knelt before him with arms outstretched and looking into his face cried, Rabboni. I awakened in full light, gripping the Bible with muscles tense and nerves vibrating. Under the inspiration of this vision, I wrote as quickly as the words could be formed, the poem exactly as it had since appeared. That same evening, I wrote the music. This song was first published in Gospel Message number 2, Hall Mack 1912, which Miles co-edited. Miles wrote the words and the music containing 3 stanzas with the chorus and refrain. This song means so much to me because I played this to say goodbye to my cousin Richard Evans. Richard Evans was father to some of my very favorite cousins with whom I still communicate and interact today. One of my favorite stories of this fine man, Richard Evans, is when he was negotiating selling his family farm to Charles Keating. As I understand, Charles Keating was trying to talk my cousin into taking stock in his company. I think it was American Continental Corporation and Lincoln Savings and Loan. I'd be amiss if I didn't tell you a short story about the famous Charles Keating. In our Phoenix, Arizona Valley of the Sun. In the 1980s, Keating ran American Continental Corporation and the Lincoln Savings and Loan Association. and took advantage of loosening restrictions on banking investments. His enterprises began to suffer financial problems and were investigated by federal regulators. His financial contributions to and requests for regulatory interventions from 5 sitting U.S. senators led to those legislators being dubbed the Keating Five. Excuse me. When Lincoln failed in 1989, it cost the federal government over $3 billion, and about 23,000 customers were left with worthless bonds. In the early 1990s, Keating was convicted in both federal and state courts of many counts of fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. He served 4.5 years in prison before those convictions were overturned in 1996. In 1999, he pleaded guilty to more limited set of wire fraud and bankruptcy fraud counts and was sentenced to the time he had already served. Keating spent his final years in low-profile real estate activities until his death in 2014. In 1984, Keating's company bought Lincoln Savings and Loan Associations for just over $50 million. Over the next 4 years, Lincoln's assets increased from $1.1 billion to $5.5 billion. Lincoln's particular investments took the form of buying land and taking equity positions in real estate development projects and buying high-yield junk bonds. A sales document from this period urges staff to always remember the weak, meek, and ignorant. Are always good targets. Being the conservative man, my cousin Richard Evans, I'll take the cash. It proved to be a good lesson. I was fortunate to receive his leadership and direction throughout my life, but mostly he led as a quiet leader. This was enough for me. I'd like to dedicate this song to the wonderful family of Richard Evans. You have all been so kind to include me in your lives and many fine celebrations, especially wedding celebrations. From this great man, Richard Evans, I have many fine cousins. I'd like to mention 2 of my beautiful cousins, daughters of Richard Evans, the lovely Robin and Mary. Thank you for listening. Oh, I'd also like to mention Richard, throughout his life, he was a little bit hard of hearing, and it was due to his service to us in World War II on a battleship. He had a role to play near the guns.
That was a good